You've spelunked into the Mat Cave.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into this week's episode of the Mat Cave. Thank you all so much for spelunking on by. This week, we have a lot to go over, so not much of an intro for you here. So the usual asks, please like, comment, subscribe, thumbs up dudes, wherever it is, however you listen, helps me out a ton, and share this show with just one person that you think might enjoy the program. And then you can find me on Facebook, The Mat Cave Podcast. You can find me on Instagram, The Mat Cave Podcast, as well as on YouTube, The Mat Cave Pod. So that is really all the time I have for intros today. I am going to dive straight into it. So let's start with Real Salt Lake. I know, a little bit of a curveball there. I'm not going straight into the football, but I am going into the football. With Real Salt Lake losing against Seattle, they are still alive in the playoff race. In fact, they are still ninth, because Colorado also lost. So, what does that mean? Well, it's very simple for Real Salt Lake. Win, and you're in. Draw, you need help. Lose, you're out. That's basically where it is, because behind Real Salt Lake are two teams, the Colorado Rapids and the San Jose Earthquakes. So, with what they have being played, Colorado is against LAFC. LAFC is a buzzsaw, especially ever since they got Son Heung-min from Tottenham. That's going to be a loss. So Colorado's not really going to be a threat. San Jose is against Austin FC. So Austin FC doesn't really have much to play for. They're pretty much locked into their position and into their game against Portland for their first round matchup. So it could be a situation where Austin doesn't really trot out their number ones, but San Jose does, and San Jose wins. What does that mean for Real Salt Lake? So let's take the Real Salt Lake result out. San Jose wins. They're up at 41 points, which puts them 1 point above Real Salt Lake, which would mean Real Salt Lake falls out because RSL is currently ninth. Numbers 8 and 9 make the playoffs and are in a one-game playoff thing. So what I envision happening here is Real Salt Lake does get the win. They play October 18th, so that is this coming Saturday. It is on the road, which is worrying because Real Salt Lake's record on the road is third worst in the Western Conference and fourth worst in the league at 3 wins, 10 losses, and 3 draws. It's not great news. We'll see if Real Salt Lake can pull this one out. I think they can because St. Louis City SC, that's a tongue twister, say that 5 times fast, they aren't very good. They are already eliminated from playoff contention, and so the only thing they have to play for is to knock Real Salt Lake out, which is still a lot to play for. So, personally, Diego Luna will be back to the team. He was not with the team this weekend because of international duty. And so, when I look at this, I see Real Salt Lake pulling out a win and somehow making the playoffs. That shocks me, but it's not really making the playoffs, it's sneaking in, and it's not really making the playoffs because they would still have to face off against FC Dallas in that play-in, playoff, whatever you want to call it, game. And I don't see them winning that one because it's on the road. That's just where it is. So Real Salt Lake somehow still alive, and they will get Diego Luna back for the closing game of the season in St. Louis, of all places. That's how we have it here. Diego Luna looked good for the U.S. men's national team against Ecuador. I do want to shout him out. He came on as a second-half substitute, injected a lot of energy into the squad. So very encouraging from what I saw there, too, especially with the World Cup coming up and the final rosters coming up. I think there's maybe one more international window before the World Cup starts, and anything that Diego Luna can show in the international window here with the one more game against Australia, and then they have the other international window before the World Cup actually begins, is only going to be good because he only has one more club game left unless he manages to land on a team in January. A lot going on with Real Salt Lake that you're probably not very aware of, but I am keeping a pulse on it, and I'm very interested, especially in Diego Luna's career, and that's where we stand. All right, so let's move it on to the Utah Mammoth. And if you haven't been watching or listening to Utah Mammoth Daily on YouTube, where have you been? Hey, come on over. I talk about Utah Mammoth every day. So if you want your Utah Mammoth fix, you can get it there too. You won't have to wait for the weekly episode. But the Utah Mammoth started the season officially. They lost against the Avalanche, my other team, 2-1 in a very strong-looking performance against a team that is a Stanley Cup favorite. They lost 2-1 in a game they definitely could have tied late and definitely could have won. So they were never out of reach against a Stanley Cup favorite. And then against Nashville, against a very veteran-laden team, in the second period, they showed their youth. They fell for a lot of veteran tricks. The veterans of Nashville definitely showed them a little bit more of what they need to learn, especially how to game the referees into getting penalties called for you. That happened a lot in the second period for Utah. But what they didn't do in the second period, which they did a lot last year, was collapse. And I was very pleased with that. With the youth not being that young anymore, they are coming along in a major way. Key among that is Dylan Guenther. Dylan Guenther has looked outstanding in the preseason as well as in these first two games. He has 2 goals, 1 goal each, and he scored the overtime winner off of a broken play. He tried to pass it to Mikhail Sergachev, who was already skating off, potentially for a change. It bounced off the boards. Dylan Guenther, stuck with it, got control, shrugged off the poke check of the guy behind him. There was another Nashville Predator coming hot behind him too, and he deked the goalie, went 5-hole, and scored the game winner. It was fantastic singular play from a wonderful player that The Athletic and ESPN are calling a dark horse to make Team Canada for this coming Olympics. Yeah. I mean, we all know about Clayton Keller and Logan Cooley for the U.S. men's team. But Guenther for Canada? It's looking likely if he continues to play like this. I'm very encouraged by what I'm seeing early on from Utah. They opened the season with 3 on the road, and 10 of their first 15 are on the road as well. So this first, I guess, it's not really even a quarter of the season, like a fifth of the season maybe. But it's a very interesting stretch for a young team that's going to be on the road a lot. But last year, they were a very solid road team. They need to improve their home performance, which they probably will. I mean, they're settled now. It's not a new arena. It's not weird. It's more routine. And they know the names of the people working at the Delta Center now. They know the names of the people that help them park their cars and all this other stuff. So it's going to be a more comfortable place for the young guys and the veterans. And I think Utah is really poised to make the playoffs this year. I said they would last year, and they were close. They were probably the closest of any team not named Calgary. And I think they break the barrier this year. And if you listen to the Utah Mammoth Daily that I do over on YouTube, you can hear my full musings on the team as we head into the season. So that's Utah Mammoth update here. I have a lot to cover today, so I can't really go into much more depth. But I'm a Brandon Tanev fan as well. When he was on the ice, the team just was different. And Kevin Stenlund is having a fantastic start to the season as well. He's filling in admirably for all of the faceoffs he has to do because of the injuries to Barrett Hayton and Alexander Kerfoot. And he's doing a wonderful job too. So this team is doing great. Veggie's great between the pipes. I just want him to keep it rolling. Next game up is the Blackhawks on the 13th, which is a Monday. And then it's their first home game against Calgary on the 15th. And if you got tickets to that, I'm very jealous because it's going to be a rowdy time. It's going to be fun. Okay, so that does it for the 2 professional squads here in the state. Let's move it on to Utah State first, the late game, because for some reason, there's still a team in Hawaii. I say get the team in Hawaii based in, I don't know, California, Oregon, Washington. I don't care. But just do that, you know? And it'll be easier for TV, too. I mean, next year, Utah State won't have to deal with it. They're going to be in the Pac-12, or as I'm going to call it, the Pac-State Conference, because every school in the Pac-12, for the football at least, has state at the end of their name. Don't believe me? Look it up. It's going to be the state conference. That's what it's going to be. But Utah State falls in this one, 44-26, and Hawaii looked really good, which was really weird to say. Timmy Chang is doing a wonderful job for the Rainbow Warriors out there in Hawaii. They are 5-2. Utah State falls to 3-3. And the same bugaboos that hit Utah State last season are hitting them this year. Healthy quarterback Bryson Barnes was dinged up. They didn't know if he was going to go in this one. He did go, and then he got dinged up again. And then the defense just disappeared. There was no defense. I mean, Ike Larson came back off of suspension, and John Miller was also flying around. He got a half a sack. But that wasn't enough. There was too many just blown coverages for long plays for Hawaii, for Utah State to mount any sort of comeback. I mean, at halftime, it was 24-20. Even at the end of the third quarter, it was we're looking at 26-27. But then in the fourth quarter, Hawaii blew it open. So there's a lot for Bronco to coach on. I'll say that much. Miles Davis fumbled the ball. There was a turnover there. Bryson Barnes is good for a turnover a game as well. He threw a pick. Overall, Utah State is performing at about what I expected them to perform at. Next week for Utah State is San Jose State. San Jose State has not looked good at all this season, which is kind of a surprise because they were almost picked to be the runner-up in the conference behind Boise. But that's looking like it's going to be Boise versus UNLV at the end of the season in the Mountain West. So that's what we're looking at here for the Aggies. Jacob Conover might be starting this next one against San Jose State, which could be, lucky because of how weak San Jose State has looked. But with how bad Utah State's defense is looking, who knows what's going to happen the rest of the season. Utah State's offense is going to have to put up 50 a game for them to have a shot, realistically. Even with standouts like Ike Larson, who I still think can play on Sundays, and the emergence of John Miller, who is starting to look like he can play on Sundays. The rest of the defense just looks lost, confused. They don't understand Broncos defense, which is to be expected in year one, but by game 6, you would expect most of those kinks to sort themselves out. But the proof is in the pudding, and the pudding has Utah State currently at 3-3 and not really going to be favored the rest of the way, except for maybe in 1 or 2 games. Another rough year in the offing for Utah State, and I don't know if Bronco's going to stick around in the Pac-12. They have that new athletic director. They're moving to a new conference. There could be a new identity in the offing for them. I don't know, but if I were to put my finger in the wind, I would say it's about 65-35 the Broncos staying. 65 the Broncos staying, 35 as he's gone, either by him walking away or the school asking him to walk away nicely. That's basically where I'm at with that. Utah State, buckle up, Aggie fans. It's going to be a rough ride. Now let's move on to the late game. Not the late game, but the late game. Utah against Arizona State. And I don't know if you saw it on Facebook and Instagram, but I made a post that said Utah, if they win this game and they do it in big-time fashion, they will be the favorites in the Big 12 in my eyes. Because Texas Tech, while they have looked really impressive, Utah's offense did not hit its stride yet. They were still figuring out what worked and what didn't. Utah's figured out what works. Yeah, against West Virginia, they're a bad team. Okay. Arizona State's defense was really good coming into this game. They were one of the best defenses in the Big 12, which in the past was kind of a joke. It was kind of a meme. Defense in the Big 12, what's that? Because games in the Big 12 back in the day were 55-48, stuff like that. Now, not so much. There are good defenses like Utah's, BYU's, Arizona State's, Texas Tech's. Those are all real defenses now. But this game, Utah just dominated. They broke the back of Arizona State. And it was kind of nice to see, really, because of the way Kenny Dillingham is. He's that suck up until he beats you, and then he's going to flout it over you all the time. And he just got his rear end handed to him by a Kyle Whittingham team that is looking whole, like a Kyle Whittingham University of Utah team. Run you into the ground and just beat you senseless and have the defense just shut down the game. And that's what happened against Arizona State. I don't know if the weather played a factor. I don't really think it did. But, I mean, if you just look at the stats, Arizona State just couldn't do anything. They averaged 3 yards a carry. That's not very good. And they averaged 3 yards per completion. That's also not very good. Utah looked like a team that is destined for the Big 12 championship game. I'm going to come out and say it. When Devin Dampier does not turn the ball over, and when offensive coordinator Jason Beck is on a roll like he was in this one, you're not going to beat Utah. You're just not, because Morgan Scalley and Kyle Whittingham's defense is always going to be on their game. Jackson Benny looked really good. Lander Barton is always a rock in the middle. John Henry Daly lives in the backfield. Teo Johnson locks down the back end. And Levani Damuni can get in there and do some things as well. So this defense is the best in the Big 12. Sorry, Cougar fans, it just is. If you look at the stats, sure, BYU's is better on the stats, but who has BYU played? If you look at their last 2 games for BYU against Colorado and Arizona, Colorado, West Virginia, and Arizona, I guess. I mean, West Virginia. But those are the 3 bottom teams in the Big 12, not named Oklahoma State or Kansas. That's just how it is. Utah has played Arizona State and Texas Tech. Utah's defense is looking really good. So I'm very confident in that Hot Take Friday post I made of Utah being the team to beat in the Big 12, because Texas Tech and Utah are on a collision course for the Big 12 championship in Dallas. They just are. And that game's going to be fun to watch. If everybody stays healthy, knock on wood, I'm clacking my head here. Knock on wood, everybody's healthy going into that game. It's going to be different. It really is. Texas Tech hasn't been in a championship game before. Utah has. Utah's coaching staff has. And looking at that game, and I know I'm way down the road here. We still have 6 games left to play. But looking at the schedules, looking at Utah's schedule here, moving forward, after BYU, it's Colorado. Yeah. It's Cincinnati at home. If it was in Cincinnati, I would treat it differently, but it's at Rice-Eccles. They travel to Baylor, who their offense can be scary, but they have no defense. Kansas State, whose season has fallen apart. And then they close out against Kansas. If Utah beats BYU, if Utah beats Cincinnati at home, they're going to be favored in every game they play. I mean, it's Kyle Whittingham's world, and we're just living in it right now. That's really where we're at. The one game Utah looked bad in was against Texas Tech. And that's because I think Utah got ambushed a little bit. 10 a.m. kickoff, not really what Utah's used to. Texas Tech, it's like a noon kickoff for them almost. So it's just the way I look at it, the way that I have broken down teams in the past for you guys, it just looks like Utah is going to be there at the end of the year. It really does. So Devin Dampier looked good. Jason Beck was calling a wonderful game. Arizona State just didn't want to be there after the first quarter because of the way Utah beat them up. And now we go into Holy War Week. Speaking of the Holy War Week, let's move into the BYU versus Arizona game, which was a very odd game. Any way you slice it. BYU remains undefeated, winning 33-27. By the way, the final score, if you didn't see it, of Utah versus Arizona State, that was 42-10. So 33-27, double overtime victory for the Cougars. At multiple points during this game, I thought to myself, yeah, it's over. True freshman quarterback behind center. He's thrown 2 interceptions. He fumbled once that could have broken the psyche of anybody towards the end of the game there. And somehow BYU still pulls it out. That's the Kalani Sitake magic coming at you. I do want to point out one thing that everybody does not like to hear about, but it is the officiating, and it was garbage in this game. It was hot garbage. And I'm not talking about Keanu Tanavasa headbutting Noah Fafita. What the heck was that about? I'm glad he got tossed. That was a stupid play. I'm talking about the Isaiah Glasker roughing, I'm doing air quotes here, roughing the passer penalty. Noah Fafita is 5'6". Isaiah Glasker is 6'3". There is no way under the sun going full tilt can anybody not hit Noah Fafita in the helmet. No way. I'm glad they removed the targeting from that call. But the rules are, if you call roughing the passer with targeting as your call, and there was no targeting, there is no penalty. So that should have been removed, and that shouldn't have happened. Now, towards the end of the game, there was a pass interference call that was called against Arizona, who are also not happy with the officiating. That was not really pass interference that kept the drive alive for BYU at the end of the game to force overtime. The officiating was terrible. It wasn't that great in the Utah-Arizona State game either. And I'm sure the Big 12 is not going to have the same crew for the Holy War that they had last year. That refereeing crew was not ready for that environment. So I think they're going to have the A crew for the Holy War this coming week. But going back to the BYU-Arizona game, I was very, very impressed with LJ Martin. LJ Martin is a first-team All-Big 12 running back should he stay healthy. He is. He averaged 6.5 yards per carry. His season average is 7 yards per carry. Yes, that's not all just LJ Martin. That's the offensive line as well, and the threat of Bear Bachmeier holding the ball, whether it's a quick hitter pass or running. But LJ Martin is a beast. He carried the ball 25 times for 162 yards, and he also caught a pass that didn't go anywhere, but he still caught a pass as well. That's 26 touches for one guy who, coming into the season, did have durability concerns. He really did. He's been injured the past 2 seasons he's been at BYU. He worked incredibly hard in the offseason to fix that, and it looks like it's worked and is paying off. The defense needs Jack Kelly. He is that good. He is that much of a difference maker. Without Jack Kelly out there, BYU's defense looks pensive, they look scared, and they can't get anything on the quarterback. They can't. BYU had 0 sacks. Halfway through the game, I was thinking I was watching an Ilaisa Tuiaki defense. That's really what I thought I was watching because there was no pressure on the quarterback. There were very few blitzing situations, and it was just shell defense, hope they don't pop the top off. That's really what I was watching, and it was incredibly frustrating, especially with how Jay Hill has called the past year and a half his defenses. So having Jack Kelly back for the Utah game is critical. If he is not able to go, that is trouble, because he will be the one tasked with keeping Devin Dampier in check. There is nobody else on BYU's defense other than Isaiah Glasker that can do that, and Isaiah Glasker is better in coverage than he is at spying a quarterback. Boy, this game had a lot of warts for BYU. They still came away with the win. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. Parker Kingston is popping off. Apparently, he wasn't fully healthy in a couple of the early season games. He's healthy now. He led the team with 5 catches for 117 yards because Arizona's defense was so keyed in on Chase Roberts and Carson Ryan that Parker Kingston had a field day against their number 2 defensive back. It was a great coming out party for Parker Kingston, especially with the troubles he had early on in the year that even I talked about with his fumbling issues. Bear Bachmeier did fumble. He didn't cover the ball properly going into a pile. I'm sure that will be coached up. And that really did it for interceptions. Isaiah Glasker had an interception that shouldn't have been an interception. If you're a coach or an analyst looking at the game and he picks that off, you're going, no, yes, but no, because we would have better field position if he didn't pick that off. Anyway, overall, the performance was very subpar. Keanu Tanavasa lost his head again. That's coaching. He's going to need to keep his head against Utah. Everybody and their grandmother is going to know that Utah, their offensive line, their running backs are going to be trying to get him to do something stupid. So he needs to keep his head. He did not keep his head in the past 2 games. That stupid penalty against West Virginia, and then again, another idiotic penalty against Arizona. He has to keep his head. And then for the secondary for BYU, enough with the true freshman on the outside. They got burned so many times with the true freshman on the outside that towards the end of the game, I was very pleased to see that Jay Hill learned from his mistakes, and he kept Maury Bamba and Terrian Alexander III. I can't believe I forgot his name. Terrian Alexander III on the outside for the remainder of the game after those kids got burned. One of them gave up on a play. He just gave up. And the guy caught a touchdown. Like, are you kidding me? My goodness. BYU wins this one in overtime. Could have lost it at the very last play. It went off the kid's fingertips. So like I said, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And that's where we're at with BYU and Utah State. Utah, Mammoth, and Real Salt Lake. That is so much stuff that I almost forgot to do my Borderlands 4 review. So here is my Borderlands 4 review. It's been a long time coming. I've played through the majority of the game, so I beat the game with one character, level 50, maxed it out, got into the ultimate Vault Hunter mode, and I am about halfway through the story with the Siren class, and I just got to say, this game is so much fun. Is it Borderlands 2? No, but it doesn't need to be. Is the villain Handsome Jack? No, doesn't need to be. It is a very fun game. Very fun. Is it groundbreaking? No. Is it going to blow the socks off of you? Also, no, but it is a good time, and that's what gaming should be. Everybody that is expecting every new game to come out to be a blockbuster, to change the way gaming is, to be the new X game, whether it's, Fortnite or back in the day, the new Halo or World of Warcraft or any of this other stuff, the lens needs to be reset, and that's what I'm trying to do in my own small way. Is the game fun? Is it worth your money? Is there replayability? Borderlands 4 checks all of those boxes for me. It's funny without being disgusting. There is a villain you can hate. There is portions of the story that are very intriguing. And then the gunplay has increased exponentially over Borderlands 3. And I know they're working on them, but the legendary drop rates, at least for me, maybe I'm just lucky, have been pretty good. They've been pretty good. So looking at Borderlands 4 in the Matt Cave review scale, we have buy it no matter what, buy it if you like the series, wait for it to go on sale, or avoid it entirely. Well, I can tell you for sure it's not those bottom two. It is definitely a buy it. It really is. There are Easter eggs within the game that reference back to prior games, but it's not to the point where you feel left out for not catching it, which is really good writing. It's not brilliant writing, but it's good writing. There's stuff in there that references past games, especially Borderlands 2 and 3, but you're not missing out on any of the major story points for not understanding those Easter eggs. So this game, is it Game of the Year? No. That's probably going to go to Claire Obscure 33, a game that I personally cannot play because the story is too heavy for me, and I don't want that in my video games with what I'm dealing with in my outside the show life. So Borderlands 4 will be in the conversation for Game of the Year. It will. It will be on the final board at Jeff Keighley's Game Awards come December. It won't win, but that's okay. Not every game has to be Game of the Year. You can stay in your lane. Just look at Battlefield 6. Battlefield 6 went back to basics. And they went, okay, what did people like in Battlefields 2 and 3? Why were they so popular and successful? How can we bring that to modern day? How can we improve and increase the enjoyment of those games to the modern day gamer? You can unlock skins for your guns based on your performance with them. You can unlock a myriad of attachments for your guns in Battlefield 6. Borderlands 4 did more of the same. What works? What do our fans want? Do we need to go out and try to get the lion's share of the market by changing things that don't need to be changed? That is where AAA studios are going wrong. They're going outside of their lane, trying to become the new hotness, and then they lose their way. Just look at Call of Duty. That's all I got to say right there. And look at World of Warcraft as well. They got too big for their britches, and they have lost people. Destiny as well is a prime example of becoming too big for your britches, not listening to anybody, thinking you know better than everybody, and now you have the lowest player count in your history, dating back to Destiny 1. Destiny 2 has its lowest concurrent player count across all platforms that it's ever had. Destiny, and I hate to say this, I really do, is dead. And that is a warning sign to studios like the studios for Battlefield and Borderlands, even for sports games like Madden, EA Sports College Football, MLB The Show. You do not need the lion's share of the market. You have your space, and if you make a quality game, people are going to play it. So to bring this full circle, Buy Borderlands 4. You will not regret it. All right, that's the show this week, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here. I told you I had a lot to talk about. And I will see you all next week after the Holy War, after the home opener for the Mammoth, and after maybe a surprise playoff appearance for Real Salt Lake. I'll see you all then.